Hello guys, and welcome back to NagashArchitecture, and in this video we're going to be looking at how you can render realistic images without Path Tracer in Twinmotion. So currently here I have a Revit model that I worked on recently for one of my friends, and I want to render two images from this building. That's one external render and one internal render, just to bring the building to life. Now I have already started modeling the building itself, so I'm going to just load in the project because the entire modeling phase is usually very long, but I already started the project. So I'm just going to choose not to save this, just go ahead and hit no, and then we're going to load the project. So we're here now. That the project is loaded, you can see what the model currently looks like in Twinmotion, and we need to render two images. That is one image from exterior view like this, and then the other image from maybe interior view of the building. So I can just zoom in here to Twinmotion internal view. This is what the building currently looks like. I modeled the lights, but they don't really look like how I want it to be in Twinmotion. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this light. I think that's the first thing I'm going to start with. And in order to get that to look the way I want, it's currently set to wood right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and change this model from what it is here, shrink plywood 01. That's obviously not what I want, and I can go back to material, scroll down a little bit, and then find the neon lights, and then we can use one of the neon materials to replace this material that is currently for the lights. Let's go ahead and drop it in here, and okay, there we go, we have our lights. And I don't like how thick the cylinders of the light bulb is, so it looks really big anytime I zoom in. So I'm going to try and change that as well, but I can do this in Revit. It's why I opened Twinmotion and Revit at the same time. So in Revit here, we can go ahead to the ceiling, floor, ground level, and we can see the lights in here. And what I want to do is actually change the dimension of this. So I can just go ahead and edit in place. We can go ahead and select this item now, and yeah, I think I can just pull this. It's an extrusion as well, so okay, no, we have to edit the extrusion itself. So I can just select this and change this from 95 to maybe 65. Make sure it's as small as I want. Edit this, it was 100, so I can actually make this 85, just bring it a lot closer. And this was 120, so we can make this 95. So this is kind of what I'm looking for. I don't want the lights to be too big. It was really big before, so okay, go ahead and accept this. There's a huge ring in between here, I don't know what that is, so I can just select this. If this one is 85 and you are 85 as well, that's not very good. So I can just change this to maybe 75. That looks better now. Yeah, we can work with this. And the next thing I want to do is to actually delete all the other items, because I did not model it the correct way. I'm going to have to manually delete everybody else. So let's select all instances in the entire project and delete. So I've moved my ceiling around a bit, so I'm going to have to move the light into where I want it to be now. So I can just use the move tool here and find the center of the, I'm actually just going to eyeball it now. Just pick the center, find the center of the ceiling grid and just plug it in there, and then we're just going to have to copy the lights over to the other side. So I'm just going to use the center again, eyeballing it, select this one and then zoom out 1200. I think that's okay. Another 1200. Okay, but this might be too many lights. Undo. Let's try this again. Select this and press enter, and let's eyeball the center of the light. There we go. And let's try 1.8. Yeah, that's better. 1.800. So now that we have our two lights, we can copy them 3 lights down. Let's copy this, try again and eyeball the center of these lights, and I'm just going to use 1002 this time. 1002 again. And yeah, so we have a kind of lighting system now. So we can go into 3D and let's try and save, because you need to be in 3D to actually synchronize it with Twinmotion. So we can go into the Datasmith tab and try and synchronize now. So the material is going to change in Twinmotion once the synchronization is done. Anyway, we can work with this as our lights and then use the eye and try to choose the time of day. And we can go over to, let's say, 6 a.m. The reason why I'm coming all the way down here is because I want to actually use I want to actually transfer the light and actually create that light ray from each of the bulbs. So we're going to go into the lighting system and let's try something like IES 01. I'm just going to bring this out here. Let me drop it on the floor and go over to the lighting controls. I'm going to first of all reduce the intensity of the light to maybe 100, and we can then bring it up, and it gets really tricky here. So I'm going to have to look at the lights from this view, try and see it as horizontal as possible. Oh, this is quite challenging, but that's the joy of Twinmotion anyway. So we're going to try and align this light with the bulb or the lamp that we have in our ceiling. So that might be difficult at first, but once you get a hang of it, all you have to do is just copy it to the other remaining lights, the other remaining bulbs. So I'm going to move this in here and hopefully we have it where it's supposed to be. Okay, I think this is a good view. So we can align this here. Now I think we got the x-axis correctly, so we can align this, try and take it all the way up to see if it goes now. Okay, you can use Q and E to actually move up and down. So trying to figure out where that light is. There we go. And okay, now we can actually hold on to shift and copy this light to the next bulb in here. An instance of, let's make that 2 instead of 1. So now that our 2 bulbs are in place, we can move this into the center once again. And okay, in case you're missing your lights, you can actually come to your scene graph in here and find all the lights and try to move them manually in case you run out of ideas and you don't know where the light ran to. So you can just come in there and try to align the lights again. Now with all 3 lights aligned, I'm just going to select each of them from the scene graph. So we have IES 1. I'm going to just hold on to shift and select IES 2 and IEX 3, and we're going to copy those 3 lights to the next frame. So you can just push it here like this, and we're going to create an instance sort of copy and make that 2 as well, and then say okay, it jumps immediately to the 3rd frame. Now we have all the lights in the scene all centered, so I'm just going to scroll down again and hold on to everybody, and we're going to tone down the, first of all, attenuation, make that 250, so the light is not too intense, and cone angle says 160. I think that's fine. We're going to push the intensity down a bit just to be sure that we're not, let's say 80% intensity. So that's basically what our lighting looks like. So you can see from here that we've been able to add lighting into the scene, and we can bring the daylight back in now. Just take it away from that, and yeah, it looks slightly better now. So before I take a picture of this, because that's how we're going to start our render, I'm going to just add some furniture again into this. So we're going to go into the home tab, living room, because we're currently in the living room, and we can go over to tables first and add a center table to this one. So I like this wicker. I can just drag that in here. It has this glass look about it. So for this region here, you can see that there's a half wall, the other side is wood, and then the other side is plasterboard. I don't really like this as it is, but I'm just going to hide this demarcation between the two of them with a shelf, because I don't really have time to actually start redesigning the wall in Revit. I'm just going to use storage and find a PhD shelf, or maybe the restruct shelf. We can drop that in here, try and rotate it like this. I think that's, yeah, this is the better angle, sorry, oops, 90 degrees. So we're just going to shift the shelf all the way back, use that to mask our separation in there. I'm also going to bring in a desk, a sort of table that's, let me just find that somewhere in here. A table that is like a bench, kind of, that's what I'm looking for. So the living room tables are not so nice. I'm going to try the office tables. So let's just go in here and then try something tables, and let's look at tulip. It's too big, so we're going to try something else. Let's try this gracious desk. Okay, this looks subtle enough, so I'm just going to rotate this, and it makes more sense being that it's beside the shelf, so you can actually grab a note from there and, you know, read a book. And we're also going to add a lamp from the living room. Just go ahead and choose lamp, and we can choose this Columbia lamp and just drag it and drop in here, just to tie everything together. And yeah, we have our living space turning up now. So we can also have a good angle from this view here, from our building, and just create a 3D view from here. Okay, that is making me reconsider the position of this lamp. Let me just move this somewhere else, slide it away to the other side. So okay, now we have a rendering composition that we can work with. We can go into the image tab and then go ahead and hit media, and from media we can choose one image, add a new one. I think I added one before, so I'm going to add a new one in here, and then go over to the camera settings and move the focal length wide a bit. House still looks empty, but for now we can start with that. Just change the focal length to 12 millimeters and zoom in a little bit. Find a good spot for it. Yeah, now we can have everybody where we want them to be. So we can go ahead and refresh the image here, and then go back to image mode, and then fill up the entire building with more resources, more furniture. We can go ahead and change the environment as well after the camera settings. I think for now I'm going to leave the focal length at 12, and you can also change the time of day to maybe evening. This looks cool. So yeah, we can start with this, and currently Currently, remember that we don't have access to ray tracing, so if I hover my mouse here, you can see that my laptop cannot actually, it doesn't actually meet the requirements for the Path Tracer feature, so we have to work with normal lighting systems in this case. And going into the lighting exposure, you can actually reduce the exposure to about 0.5 and see what, oh, that's an increment, sorry, minus 0.5. And okay, this is what we get, so that's a bit too low from what I enjoy doing, so minus 0.25. yeah, we can leave it at that. So auto exposure is selected. You can turn this off, but that's going to be complicated because you have to start doing the exposure settings by yourself manually, and I've not yet practiced that, so I'm not going to show you what I'm going to do there. I haven't practiced it, so I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm just going to leave it on auto exposure, and yeah, you can go over to the render tab, and in the render tab is where you're going to deal with shadows and shadow bias and lighting and all those kind of stuff. Currently the shadow is set to 20,000 centimeters, but I'm going to increase this or reduce it, and we'll see what actually happens when you go ahead and reduce it or increase it. So first I'm going to type in 8,000, and you can see that the lower the value you have for shadows, the more crisp the shadows look, the more defined the shadows look. I'm going to tone it down to 2,500 now. You can see that the shadows become sharper and sharper, but in real life I don't think that's going to apply that all the way from the window at the far end that you're going to have a clear shadow over here. It's not going to be so realistic, so I'm going to actually increase this to a value of maybe 10,000, just to have the crisp nature of the shadow there, but not so there when it gets this other region. So that seems like a good balance for me, and I'm going to leave it like this. And the shadow bias, it shows here 0.5. To be honest with you, I don't know what shadow bias actually does, so I'm just going to slide it over to see if there's any difference. I don't see any difference in it, so I'm just going to leave it at 0.5 and not going to touch it. There's global illumination as well, or illumination, so I'm just going to disable this and see what changes. And again, nothing really changes, so I don't really know the difference between the two of them. I'm going to tone down the intensity of global illumination as well, and I don't really see much difference in this sense. I'm going to also increase it to 1, not much difference, so I'm going to leave it in the center point of 0.48. And these are the two images I'm going to use for interior rendering. This is the first image for interior. This is the second image with a lot less exposure into the building. And the third image we're going to pick up is one from the outside. So we're going to just zoom out a bit. Oops, that was too fast. So we're going to zoom out a bit. So you notice that my grass pattern has actually disappeared, which is annoying, so I might have to do that all over again, because I think I changed the grass pattern in Revit, so it kind of changed the material in Twinmotion as well. So I'm going to have to change this default grass to maybe something else. So we're going to start in the library and go over to ground, to nature ground and grassy ground. We're just going to drag that in here, and boom, so that's a good starting point. And I'm going to just add some wear and tear to this ground to just make it slightly more realistic. You can go ahead and increase the grunge for the ground, and the next thing to do is actually paint over my grass material from Twinmotion that is slightly more realistic. I'm just going to paint it over the floor here, and it shouldn't take very long, but you can just watch and follow along with how I'm going to do it in the video. So that's how I've been able to go about doing it, and I'm just going to disable this now and just press escape, and we're going to zoom in and see if we got our grass material right. It's going to be a bit messy and uncontrolled now, but you can see it's still scanty, and that's not going to be a problem for us. So all we have to do in this case is just select the grass itself from the painted vegetation in here and increase the density from 30 to about 65. I think that's okay. It's still very scanty in some areas of the building, and you can see that because I was far away, my brush didn't actually get the edges quite right, but that's not a problem. You can always go over and select the eraser tool and hover your mouse again. I'm going to just reduce this to like 200 to get a smaller eraser, and then just pan your hand over and clear up all the rough edges that you were able to do when you were painting. So it shouldn't really be, I think every other place is all neat. You can still use your painted brush to try and cover up some loopholes as well, just to make sure the grass gets into the areas that they're supposed to be grass, and you have a neat painted vegetation. So now that all is set, I can actually turn the trees back on, and we'll start from banyan trees. Just bring these people back inside. We'll go ahead and select the trees all over. So yeah, we have our vegetation back now, so we can now choose our image for exterior rendering. So we need to find a good spot, and also lighting sort of helps. So I'm just going to change this from 10 o'clock to maybe this looks like 8 p.m. Okay, I like this one, but we're going to have to rotate. You can go back to ambience and then rotate your location, your sun offset, so you can turn this all the way to this other side. Yeah, so the sun is somehow facing where we are, and that's going to be a good start. So why I like to turn on HDRI environments for the exterior view is to somehow remove the background, which is skies and completely nothing. But instead of using a sky dome, okay, first of all I'm going to replace the material from the floor outside with the grass material that is here. So I'm just going to select this one and make sure that I have a forest ground. Okay, so I'm going to just zoom out and replace this material with forest ground so it looks the same. So yeah, so that's a good start, and we're not completely lost in the background now. I can now go over to the environment, from ambience, look for HDRI environment, and then turn on sky dome. Enable this. I can change it from noon clear skies to something else. So you can go over to HDRI, select the 3 dots, and then you can go over to library and choose a different one. There's noon clear sky. We can try cloudy. There's cloudy noon. You can drag that and drop in here. We can also rotate the cloudy noonday and see if we like if we can get a better view for our render. I think I like this one too. We can go ahead and create a new image from this, and of course do the same settings we did before. Start with the camera angle. We can move this a bit closer to the building just to have, let's say, 30 millimeters. Push that in there, and yeah, I kind of like this. This looks good. Ignore my geometric wobble here. I think it's because of we're using medium settings, not high settings, because my PC obviously cannot take ultra high settings. So we're going to start with this. I think I like this view the way it is, and we can obviously go in here and hit refresh to center that image. And yeah, we've gotten our 3 images. 2 of them are interior images, the third one is an exterior image, and we can use this and export it for presentation. Remember, for the exterior render, you can obviously go into the environment and change the weather settings as well. So there's sun, obviously you can shift it to rainy season and another clear sky. You can also change the settings from normal seasons to snow, winter, and of course autumn, and the rest of those other settings. You can go in there and actually change it. You can also change the fog and wind speed and all those other settings. So in order to export, you can go over to the export column here. In the image tab, we're only exporting images, so we're just going to select it in here from image, select all three. You can choose all three settings in here. It does only allow me to select one, so okay, select all images. Yeah, that's better. So hover out and then go ahead and scroll down. You see start export, and then export your three images.